Hi guys, welcome to episode 3 of WP Bros Academy. In this video, we're going to be looking at how you can create your first custom block. Super exciting stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be great. And hopefully all of you guys watching are looking forward to this as well as we dive into how you can develop your own block plugin, and we're going to learn a ton about Gutenberg development.
So first of all, we just want to talk about some of the prerequisites and what you're going to need on your machine in order to actually start building blocks. So first of all, you're going to need Node.js installed on your machine. You might already have it installed, which would be great, but if you don't, you can head over to nodejs.org and we'll put all of these links in the description, so don't worry. And from there, you can download the version for you. I would probably recommend going with the version on the left, which is recommended for most users. Sometimes on the most recent version, you can get some issues and bugs and stuff, so maybe go for this version. And then yeah, once that's installed, you'll have npm as well, and npm will be used a lot throughout block development, which we'll walk through that in a bit and show you what you'll need to write into your terminal in order to get things set up. And then what else is there to talk about, Phil?
That's pretty much it at this stage. Just Node.js, obviously npm. You're going to need to get one of your terminals. So if you're on a Windows machine, I recommend PowerShell as the terminal of choice. If you're on Mac, whichever one you're familiar with and whatever you tend to use there. And then really, obviously, we're going to cover a couple of the ways that you can go about actually getting up and running and which package to install and go with.
Yeah, so the first package to mention is the WordPress create block npm package. So this was developed if you wanted to create a single block plugin really quickly. You can spin that up using npm. However, there's also another way that Phil's managed to create a multi-block plugin. So Phil's got this multi-block plugin repo on GitHub that you can download, and we'll put the links in the description. Phil, do you want to just tell everyone about it and what it does?
Yeah, sure. So the official WordPress create block package on npm that you just saw a minute ago, that is currently, as of recording this, designed for a single plugin, single block plugin, which is fine when you're up and running. But when I first got started, that's how I got started. But as I think most developers will probably want to do, I found out very quickly that it can be a bit cumbersome trying to get a multi-block plugin set up. So I decided to spend a bit of time doing the groundwork and basically create this GitHub repo to save all of you at home the time that I spent trying to get this up and running and just tidying stuff up. So loads of boring stuff going on behind the scenes and in the webpack config. But all you need to know really is that this GitHub repo will enable you to create multiple blocks within the single plugin, which the core create block package currently doesn't do, although it is in their plans to change that in the near future. So watch this space.
Yeah, it really helps keep things clean and keeps your WordPress plugins page nice and organized without 10 or 20 plugins just filling up your screen.
Yeah, it can get a bit
block.
out of control if you started installing literally single block plugins all over the shop.
So I think we'll probably go through this in a bit more detail at some point, but for now you just need to download it and install it on your WordPress installation.
Yeah.
Okay then, so what should we dive into next? Should we have a little look at how you I'm not sure, what should we go into next?
Should we head over to the PowerShell
Okay,
and just run through quickly the process for getting up and running?
cool. All right, so open up PowerShell. I've already navigated to the plugin that I've downloaded, so that multi-block plugin. I've navigated to that directory in my XAMPP website folder.
Yeah, so it's worth mentioning that obviously it probably goes without saying, but if you are going to play about with this locally on your machine and start developing blocks, you will need a local installation of WordPress, which I'm sure you are all familiar with. So we won't bore you too much with how to go about doing that. Obviously, we've just done that ahead of time to save you sitting here watching us create a WordPress installation, basically.
Yeah, it was completely blank apart from just installing that plugin that we just spoke about. Feels amazing, multi-block plugin. So now we're in that directory. There's a couple of things that we need to do, and that's assuming you've got Node.js already installed. So we need to run a command npm install.
Yes, I'm just thinking before you run this, actually, should we head over to VS Code just to give
Good idea.
viewers a indication of what the initial cloned repo looks like in their editor?
Yeah, great idea. So in VS Code now, looking over to the left-hand side, we've got our multi-block plugin master folder, and within that, do you want to go through what's going on in there, Phil?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of this is what came out of the box with the official WordPress create block npm package, which is how I got started. So you've got like an editor config, which you're probably not going to need to touch too much, a standard git ignore file as well, which basically just ignores a few files and directories. Obviously, you've got README, you've got your webpack config, which we're going to look at in a bit more detail shortly. But the main things that we're going to want to look at the moment really are your package.json file. So package.json is what npm gives you. So if you're starting a new project from scratch, you'd run something like npm init, which would give you a package.json file, and package.json is just going to look after all of our dependencies for our project, so our dev dependencies and all of the other things. So you'll see here as well, out of the box with the WordPress create block package, WordPress uses another package of theirs called WordPress scripts. Such as, it gives you the WordPress build scripts, start scripts, all of that sort of thing, which is included above. And then you've got some dependencies and dev dependencies, things like your Sass loader, CSS loaders, and then like some WordPress core packages as well, like your block editor and initialization.
Yeah, and just to jump in, if all of this stuff looks scary to you and it's you don't understand it, don't worry. You don't need to really understand it right now. It's not gonna prevent you from being able to continue or build blocks if this doesn't make any sense to you, or if you're new to it. It's all good.
Exactly. But yeah, I think the rest we can probably cover in a sec. So maybe let's head back to the PowerShell, and we'll run the two commands, and then we can go through the file structure in a bit more detail, maybe.
Sounds good. So npm install is going to load all of our node modules into our plugin directory. And this is what we need in order to run there's a lot of things, I guess, under the hood of why we need these node modules. React being one of them, is that we're going to need React and all of the things we just saw in the package.json.
Exactly.
However, you're not going to need the node modules in production. It's just the things you need while you're in development. Or a lot of the things are what you need in development. What are the things you do need for production that are going to get run from this? Is there anything?
Let me see. It's mainly kind of the core WordPress packages, I think. So in the package.json, it gets separated out between dependencies and dev dependencies. So the dev dependencies, I think, are just what's being used for your development environment, and they're not going to get used in the obviously the output build. Whereas the dependency packages will be the things that your code relies on. So things like the WordPress packages, your block editor, blocks, internationalization, all of that sort of thing.
So when we go into production, say for this plugin, would we need to run a different command like npm install?
npm build would probably be the one.
And that will build out everything that we'll need for production and not any of the dev dependencies.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool, so this is still running. We've got a few warnings which you probably will get. It's nothing to worry about. You tend to get some warnings and stuff with such a large volume of packages. But everything there seems to be fairly okay. Would you say?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Brilliant. So now you see in our list of files and folders, we've got this node modules folder, and within that you'll see lots and lots and lots of packages. So don't worry about that. You don't need to know them all, but we're going to need them all in order to do the things we need to do. The next command then is npm start. So what's that going to do, Phil?
So this now just basically runs the development build process. So it runs the build process, but not in terms of production build. So it will just build your source code into a build folder, but you don't get all of the performance enhancements that you would with running npm build, such as minification of your code and all of that sort of stuff. So it will just run the code and output the code into the build folder as set up in the webpack.config file. But you're not going to have all of the minification, the maps, and that sort of thing that you would probably want when you're actually pushing to production.
Cool. So let's run that command. That shouldn't take too long at all. Perfect.
Yeah, you get live reload as well with the npm start, which is really helpful for development mode. So as you make changes in one of the files, it will recompile while you're working.
Yeah, that's
so you don't have to keep running npm start every single time you make a change, basically.
Yeah, no, that's really useful.
Yeah.
So that looks like it's compiled successfully, and now we've got this build folder. So within that build folder, we've got our CSS directory and the JS directory. Perfect, just what we want.
Yeah.
So shall we now look at the what is actually doing this? Do we need to explain that maybe? Is that the webpack.config.js file?
Yeah, that's the webpack file. We can have a quick look at it. Let's head over there.
Yeah, we don't have to go through it in too much detail because there's a lot going on here, but maybe just a really brief overview of what is actually happening.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the very top of this file, you'll see that I'm using a default config constant which is requiring the WordPress scripts config. So what I'm doing here is basically just saying I want to grab all of the default config settings. And what that's doing is basically all of the default config settings that you get out of the box with the official WordPress create block package. I'm just going to grab them into a constant to begin with. And you'll see that as you scroll down the page, I'm spreading in the default config values in places where I want to use the default values.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really nice, and it's all documented on the npm scripts npm package, the WordPress scripts npm package. If anyone wants to look into this in more detail, feel free. But yeah, I'm just spreading in different places. So you'll see there I've got the standard top level default config spread in at the top of the module exports. And then when we go into like module, I'm spreading in the default config.module settings,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. So with the rules doing the same thing. And I'm just sprinkling in a few different things that I wanted to have on top of the default settings for turning this single block plugin into a multi-block plugin. So for instance, you'll see that I've updated the output paths at the top just below entry. So I'm saying for all of my entry points, I want to output them to the JS folder directory. And I'm using the path.resolve for an absolute path there on the output. So first of all, I'm getting all of my JS entry points, outputting them to the JS folder, and I'm using a couple of webpack, don't know what they're called really, kind of shortcuts or I don't know, the little name in brackets basically. So I'm grabbing the name of my entry point, and that's what's going to be calling the subfolder that these are output to.
Yeah, so there's a lot of complex stuff going on here. So again, don't worry if you don't understand any of this, because to be honest, I don't really understand it that much either. Phil's done all the work on this, and it worked great. So all you need to know is as long as you've downloaded this multi-block plugin, I don't know, whatever files from the GitHub repo, you will have a multi-block plugin, and it will compile it when you run npm start. It will compile it into this build folder. So all of your blocks will now be separated out into different files and different folders for their assets.
Yeah. I mean, it's not perfect still. As I said, I'm probably waiting myself for WordPress to unleash their kind of own official multi-block plugin. But it's the best that I've managed to get it so far in that build folder to kind of tidy things up. Previously with the create block plugin that WordPress gives you for the single block plugin, the build folder even then became an absolute mess. So just separating them out into a JS file and CSS folder has kind of made a lot of difference, especially as you add more and more blocks to your project.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Okay, so let's not go on about this too much because there's a lot going on there, but that was a nice little overview of what's going on, just so we know. The next thing I think would be nice to go through is the main plugin file. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think that'd be good.
Cool. So take it away, Phil. This is your baby.
So this, again, a lot of this is what you get out of the box with the WordPress create block package. But obviously you've got your root PHP file, which is where you'll obviously register your plugin. So a bit like, obviously, if any of you have done theme development before and you've got your theme comment code at the top of your CSS, very much the same here. So obviously plugin name, description, that sort of thing. Just registering the plugin, that's what's going to get picked up by the system when you install this. And then beneath that, we've got a couple of things. So the add filter at the top, as I've kind of added some comments to that, it just basically, there's some documentation on the WordPress block handbook that says that as of 5.8, if you use the block.json file with your editor scripts and styles, basically your styles and scripts are enqueued only if that block is present on the page that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
However, I uncovered while digging deep into this that actually isn't the case, and it's actually coming out in 5.9 in January next year now. So in the meantime, what they've done, because it wasn't quite ready for 5.8, is they've released this filter, which I've just added to the top of this file. So basically, that does happen. So as we use the block.json file for our blocks in this plugin, basically the scripts and the styles will only be enqueued now if those blocks are present on the page, which is great for performance, obviously. There's loads of benefits to that. So that's why that filter is there. And after 5.9 is released, I probably won't need that anymore. So yeah, it's just a little short workaround. I've put the link above that as well. So if any of you are interested, you can go and do a bit more reading about that.
Cool.
And then finally, what we're doing beneath that is there is a function. I've just created an array, and we're just going to loop through that array of block names, basically. And we're going to register each block one by one using the file path below. So nothing too complicated there. I just created my own array because we're going to have multiple blocks. And it saves you literally writing the register block type function over and over and over again. And then we're just going to loop through that array with a for each loop. And that's it. And we're just hooking into the init hook.
Yeah, I really like this. It's really clean, and it makes it really easy to just build on top of your plugin. So whenever you want another block, you just add it to your array and off you go. It will run it and everything will work. So this is kind of, I guess, part of the power of the multi-block plugin.
Yeah. It used to be, I did release a kind of version 1 of multi-block plugin on my GitHub repo, and you used to have to update 2 files every time you created a new block. So you would obviously have to come to the PHP file to add your new block into the array up there whenever you created a new block. So it would loop through that new block and register it. But also you'd previously have to also go and add it into your webpack config, which I updated using a glob. So now you don't need to update your webpack file as well. You just need to come to the PHP file. That's the only place you need to update this every time you add a new block to your plugin.
Awesome. So we've got a couple of just dummy folders at the moment. Block 1, block 2. Of course, we wouldn't have this usually, but
yeah.
We can start in the next video from scratch, and we'll get rid of these folders, and we'll start from nothing, and we'll show you how you can actually create your first ever block, and we'll see that working in the editor. And yeah, I think that'll be pretty cool.
Awesome. I'll see you over in episode 4.